Academica Media. You are listening to Charter School Superstars, bringing you the voices of an education revolution.
Welcome to the show, everybody. I'm Ryan Kairalla. Our guest this week on the program is a licensed clinical social worker and the manager of student support systems for the Ascend Public Charter Schools network in Brooklyn, New York. Our guest specializes in utilizing the DESSA Assessment and multi-tiered system of supports to foster effective social and emotional learning practices. Our guest also champions DEI and anti-racism initiatives in charter education. You can find out more about our guest's work by visiting ascendlearning.org, and you can also check out our guest on LinkedIn. We are happy to welcome Stefanny Andujar onto Charter School Superstars. Hello, Stefanny.
Hello, Ryan. Thank you so much for having me here today.
Excited to have you here. To my knowledge, off the top of my head, I think you are the first licensed clinical social worker we've had on the program, so we can just cross that one off the list. And it leads me to want to ask this first question just off the bat. What got you interested in charter education from the social work side?
Yeah, well, thank you so much. First, I'm excited to be breaking out in this show as the first clinical social worker. Social workers are so varied in all of their skills, and I'm excited that I got to be a school social worker. So I've been a school social worker for about 10 years now. I first began my career in the Department of Education. As soon as I graduated from social work school, I was really, really passionate to work with young people and to work with them in educational settings, to really support them in socio-emotional skills and also in getting access to resources and needed services so that their education can actually feel attainable. And so through that path, it led me to working with Ascend Charter Schools. I've been here for about 5 years now, and it's an exciting organization, always changing, always growing, and with a big focus, like you mentioned, on diversity, equity, inclusion, and anti-racism, which is very unique for an academic setting as well.
I'd love to hear more about Ascend Public Charter Schools. Can you tell us a little bit about what makes it so special?
Sure. So we, at this moment in 2022, have 16 schools that are all housed in the neighborhood of Brooklyn, in the borough of Brooklyn. Yes, we are
all in just Brooklyn alone.
All in Brooklyn. We are very intentional in having all of our schools in Brooklyn. That is what sets us apart. We also serve K through 12. So we currently have 6 middle schools, 9 elementary, and 1 big high school. So we are growing with our students. And to simplify, one of our biggest goals this year, it is to reach academic achievement, and to do it in a way that is intentional, that is data-driven, and that is also acknowledging diversity, equity, inclusion. We serve over 5,000 students in Brooklyn. We have over 800 staff members, and I'm proud to say that our staff members are over 70% folks of color or BIPOC community. So we are really discerning also in terms of our hiring practices, and the ways that we practice this internally.
Excellent. It is always a welcome development to see a teaching and administrative workforce that looks like and shares the same demographic experience as the students they're teaching. The data shows that that can lead to really great student outcomes, both academically and just in the students' personal development. So that's great to hear. I want to hear a little bit more about your day-to-day work at Ascend, because I'm just imagining you as a social worker doing student support services and having to bounce around on 16 different campuses all throughout Brooklyn. You must be tired by the end of the day. I hope you have one of those unlimited Metro cards that lets you get around pretty easily.
Well, I gotta say, I'm one of those lucky New Yorkers that has a vehicle. I am so glad I have this little vehicle that lets me drive around to all of our 16 schools. It's always exciting to come into our buildings. We also only have in our buildings, only our students are housed there. So we are not in co-located buildings. So that makes it exciting to know that I am in an Ascend building, that folks know who I am. And a lot of what my job entails is really meeting with both leaders like principals, to ensure that said systems like multi-tier systems of support are happening well, and also to meet with our clinicians. We have a group of over 25 clinicians that serve our 16 schools.
Wow.
So really train them as well as the operations team to support students, and really students who are most vulnerable. So in addition to my role with SEL and DESSA, which I'll go into in a minute, my role is also to support students who are experiencing homelessness. So students who are served under the McKinney-Vento Act. So what my job looks like, it depends on the day, Ryan. That's a great question. I'd say that my week entails some uh, really learning about what's the current data around, let's say, federal policies with McKinney-Vento, then training and preparing trainings for staff. Then another day, it might entail going into schools to provide observations and feedback and some ideas for how to strengthen systems. Another day, it might look like me really crunching data and figuring out what I want this system to look like for the next round of data. So it's really exciting and dynamic.
Oh man, it sounds exciting. And those are the best jobs in education, right? The ones where every day is something different. You're taking on new and exciting challenges and opportunities each day. I love hearing about those stories from our charter school superstars. Now, in your answer, you talked a little bit about some of the what I like to call just alphabet soup that is social and emotional learning, right? It's DESSA, it's multi-tiered system of supports, MTSS. There's a lot of different letters that go into the work that you do, but those are all very important tools in the social and emotional learning process. Can you talk a little bit about some of the frameworks that you're using in your day-to-day work?
Yeah, absolutely. So first I'll start with MTSS, or multi-tier systems of support. I'm glad that you named it alphabet soup. Sometimes I can get lost in the jargon. So I'm going to bring it back in. Multi-tier systems of support refers to a specific way that we are looking at supporting all of the students within the school. So really, if we picture sort of a pyramid and we think about the bottom part of the pyramid, we call that tier one. What that means is services that all students get, and really a quick boiled down definition of that is strong classroom instruction, is positive engaging activities happening for all students. That's tier one. Tier two are supports that are geared towards those students who might need additional added either behavioral or academic interventions. And so that looks like the team meeting together, and by the team it's clinicians and teachers and assistant principals meeting together to discuss what interventions these students will receive. And then tier three, kind of the last bit of the pyramid on the top, are students who may receive special education services, who have individualized education plans, who have paraprofessionals, or who just need additional supports that are more specific. So that's, yeah.
It actually reminds me a lot of a guest we had on a few episodes ago who talked about the RTI, a response to intervention kind of, which is a similar kind of pyramid model where you start with kind of a broad base of instruction, and then you kind of, narrow it down and focus for the students who kind of need individualized attention. And I'm getting that there's kind of a similar approach that you take with MTSS, with the most narrow intervention happening in the form of IEPs and students with special needs and things like that. And so I'm guessing in your work, you are one of the architects, if not the main architect over at Ascend Public Charter, in helping design some of those, what the pyramid looks like and what students and what staff members are getting what intervention.
So I want to just name, I am one of the many architects. There are so many talented, smart folks who are at the table constantly thinking about how to really get to the student achievement piece in a multi-pronged way, in an interdisciplinary way. Just this year, we have a really robust team of folks whose main job is to analyze data so that we can be more data based, and they are the academic outcomes team. We also have a schools team made up of over 50 folks who support all of our principals to making sure that this happens, and all of our leaders, and support them in training throughout the year. So it is quite a team that we have here. And I want to name that actually even within the MTSS system, there is RTI, or response to instruction. And then there's also this RTB piece, response to behavior, which is something that I'm very passionate about. Just this acknowledgement that even though we are in an academic setting, behavioral supports and social emotional learning is such an important part of it. Is that is really how we define looking at the student in a holistic way, right? Because that student is also a child that is developing and that needs so many additional skills. In addition to math and social studies and reading, they also can do well by receiving information on self-regulation or on positive thinking, and also on maintaining focus. All of these are such essential skills.
And an oft made expression on our Academica media programs is this adage, Maslow before Bloom, right? We need to make sure that the students that we're working with are, our needs are getting met, are self-actualized, are able to self-regulate before we can ever be in a position to effectively achieve the learning outcomes that we want. And so I can see how the RTI and the RTB frameworks kind of come together and influence the work that you do. Now, you had also spoken to us about the DESSA assessment. Now, I will confess, this is one that I had to look up. It's not something that comes up very much in my day-to-day work, but I was fascinated by it. Can you tell the viewers and listeners a bit about that platform and how you use it in your work?
Sure. So the DESSA, it's another fun alphabet acronym. It stands for Devereaux Student Strength Assessment. So the beautiful part of this is that it is an assessment that is made to quantitatively allow us to measure where students are in regards to social emotional learning and where they are in terms of their skills. And so we at Ascend have a contract with Aperture, who essentially houses all of these DESSA assessments, helps us house the data, and allows all of our teachers to provide this data so that then we can make really intentional interventions that are based off of how the students are behaving on a daily manner. So that, I think the hope is that interventions around behavior can be as intentional as interventions around academics.
Absolutely. Now, a discussion of the work that you do would not be complete without also talking about an aspect of your work that I really find admirable and makes me a big fan of what you do, which is the work that you do in the DEI and anti-racism space in charter education. This is an area that has become more important for charter education and education generally, and it's an area where I get a lot of administrators and principals coming to me with greater regularity and saying, we need some advice on how to set up some DEI initiatives on our campus, or how to greater focus on anti-racism instruction and pedagogy and just assemblies and things like that. So understanding that this is very much a short form interview and we can't really give this stuff the attention it deserves, and apologies in advance for that, do you have any general advice for the administrators out there on how they can get started organizing effective DEI and anti-racism initiatives on their charter school campus?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say one of the first pieces of advice is really understanding that this must be a role. Just like we care about curriculum and pedagogy, and we make those roles within networks, that we also, even within the education network, make a role for diversity, equity, inclusion, strategic initiatives, and that we make this a specific role so that there can be continuous training, information, and initiatives garnered. So that's one that I can think about. Others.
So when you're saying make it a role, like make it somebody's job within the network, their exclusive focus, as opposed to just saying, this is something we're all going to work on kind of together, but it's none of our chief responsibilities.
Yeah, exactly. I'm going to name that. I think that this needs to be something that organizationally you are aligning yourself to, that you are committed to, and that you are working on. Because I would say that within the system of education, even, or within, we can think about where we are in this country, oftentimes diversity, equity, inclusion can stop at a conversation and not get to a place of action unless there's real explicit, intentional, and continuous movement toward that. So, I mean, one brief example is I'm actually excited. I'm going to be going to Washington, D.C. to attend a diversity, equity, inclusion workshop, and that's going to be it's going to be funded through my organization, stating we are putting funds together toward this continuous education of our staff, right? Another piece is within when at this point right now we have a vacancy within that position, but we are actively looking and interviewing. So a little bit of a plug there. But
Maybe we'll find someone for you.
maybe that would be amazing. Please apply. But when there was this amazing person in this role, I was able to work alongside her to continue to train all staff around our responsibility to support folks with LGBTQI initiatives and also around things like how do we make DEIA curriculum? How do we acknowledge each other, not just respectfully, but with the knowledge of DEIA? How do we also support our students in learning sort of a more inclusive curriculum as well?
You can find out more about our guest's work by visiting www.ascendlearning.org, and you can follow our guest, Stefanny Andujar, on LinkedIn. She seems like somebody you definitely would want to interact with on that platform, bringing so much knowledge and, of equal importance, so much dedication to the students that she serves into her work. We love to see it. And congratulations to you and the great work over at Ascend Public Charter Schools, really serving a lot of students in Brooklyn. That's pretty exciting. Before we let you go, Stefanny, one last question that I'm particularly interested in asking you. If, with the snap of your fingers, you could make any change to the education system, what change would it be?
Great question. See, in social work, we call this a magical solution question, right? If you could just wake up one morning and things would be perfect, what would they look like? So I would say in the system of education, kind of panning out and looking at the fact that it is made up of humans. It is made up of both students who we should focus on, and students who we should look at as more than just students, but also as children who are growing and developing. And it is also made up of really passionate, hardworking educators from all sides. I would say that if one thing could be changed or shifted, would be that we truly humanize each other, that we give each other benefit of the doubt, that we seek to understand rather than to criticize, and that we engage in inclusive and inquiry-based conversations so that, we acknowledge we can all learn from each other.
Tremendous insight. Stefanny, thank you so much for your time this week. I've really enjoyed our chat.
Thank you so much, Ryan. Thanks for having me. I enjoyed our chat too.
And thank you all for checking out Charter School Superstars.
The views expressed on the preceding program have been those of the hosts and guests and do not necessarily reflect the views of Academica, its clients, staff, affiliates, or advertisers.